Kill Complacency, a podcast that inspires growth and intentionality and helps you overcome your greatest obstacles.
Reality. The guy on something, he's the president CEO of Gospel for Asia. And Gospel for Asia, specifically, they try to get people to sponsor missionaries, native missionaries, to go into Asia and share the gospel. I read this book early on, and I don't think I realized how much it impacted me, but it's all about living well or below your means so you can send it forward to these other missionaries. Gospel. I haven't realized how much that grounded me until recently, and I'm watching my friends who are getting more money, and they're buying art, and they're buying watches, and they're buying new cars. I specifically mentioned this weekend because we delegated one guy to line everything up.
I got you.
And I'm
usually that guy.
Got this really expensive Airbnb. And for me, it's such a waste.
I understand.
Guys, you spent 3x what you could have. Down the street would have been just fine.
Park City, I used to live there. He actually did a show there about 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. He had seven guys, and still cost $2,500 for the week or 5 days.
It set me off, but done some reflection. And I realized that one of my maybe callings or hobby horse will be trying to inspire the world to live today to impact eternity. Because I see so much waste, and I know these guys, the $2,500 Airbnb for a guy's weekend would have been, in my opinion, we didn't need to spend 10, and we could have, because the whole point of this trip was we were gonna set aside $20K, and whatever was left, we were gonna pick a ministry and give it. And so for me, I'm just like, oh, you spend it on yourself. Today I have Roger Godwin with me. Roger Godwin is the former mayor, city manager of Warr Acres. I know him through real estate, but I also have seen him on Facebook and his heart for. Roger, could you tell me more and us more about you? What's more of your backstory? What's your upbringing? Are you from Oklahoma?
Not from Oklahoma. My family is from Oklahoma, my mom and dad. One of the things that I tell people is that I've lived in over 40 places in my lifetime. And I've lived in multiple states. I actually used to live in Park City, Utah. I was a Manny for a retired baseball player. I was working at a place called, I was just at the point, I'm done with school. I need to do something else, and this opportunity came up. Born in Texas, lived in Arkansas, Montana, Oklahoma, Florida, and Utah.
We're in Montana.
Right outside Missoula, a little mill town. Actually, a couple years ago, I had these entrepreneurs, as people in real estate, we reflect a lot because our minds are going 1,000 miles a minute. And I realized there was this really key changing point in my life where I always wanted to make sure to include people in my life. I know the devastation of not being included. I contacted a local photographer, said, hey, there's this house that I grew up in whenever I was about 6 or 7 years old. And there's this core memory that I have. Can you go take a picture of that window? And somehow she got into the house because the owner said, yeah, sure, come on. So she actually took it. That's pretty amazing. I have a lot of memories from a lot of different places. But my mom and dad are both from Oklahoma. Mom went to Northwestern after being a military brat for a long time. My grandfather was in the Air Force, and my dad was a gypsy. He was Navy, but he retired. And he just liked to move a lot. So that's why we moved. I had to ask, I've been dead now for 14 years, but I had to ask my mom the questions. Were we running from landlords? No, we always paid our bills. Dad liked to move. He was a Navy guy. He just couldn't get the itch out. I have 3 siblings, so I'm one of 4. My older brother, mom, and aunt actually live here in Guthrie with my older brother, and I got a sister that has 7 kids, and a younger brother that's got 2 kids and married. So.
When did you move to Oklahoma? How long have you been here?
Majority of the time has been since we moved here in 1991, and then I lived in Florida at one point in time and lived in Utah at one point in time. So for the most part, I am an Okie. I love Oklahoma.
Talk to me about, you said before the show, you said you had to get back to ministry. Were you in ministry at some point?
So the ministry that I did, I took a 7-hour F in college because I found my calling. I was doing EMT school at OSU, and I did my last clinical, and if I'm meant to do this, a fleece. If I can handle it, cool. If not, I can't. So something happened in the ER at St. Anthony's. You always work in the inner city to make sure worse happens there. So something happened, and I was like, I'm not meant for this. So I talked to my mentor that I worked for that goes to Bethany Church Nazarene, and he said, hey, we have this mission trip going to Brazil in just a couple weeks. Hey, I'll raise the money. I'll go. Katrina happened. and the Brazilian consulate is in Houston. So I got my visa the day that I was leaving. Send your passport in to get it back then. So
that was stressful.
God provided it. I started doing that, and I'm not a preacher, but I used to say I'm not a preacher or a teacher. God used my hands. That's what I know how to do. I've been in construction for over 25 years now, and I got to go build a church there. We had church service in the old church whenever we got there. We had church in the new church whenever we were done at 7 days. And from that, I got to go to the Micronesia Islands, go to Mexico, and got to go to did some work in Europe as well. And it's amazing because a key factor that happened, they're in this little town called Candelaria, Mexico. It's in the Yucatan Peninsula. Church wasn't necessarily to do a church project, to build on the church or anything like that, but what we did is we built in between the church and the parsonage, and we took down 16 sewing machines, and we took some master seamstress with us, and they taught these ladies and men
of the
church, gave them a skill. And we left the sewing machines there, and so they don't live too far from a big tourist area, some ancient ruins. So that's giving a fishing pole, not just fish. And then I didn't do anything for 15 years, and life blew up. And then...
So talk to me about life blowing up. We talked before the show, 2017.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what was leading up to that. Talk to me about your marriage. 7-year-old. You have 4 kids at the time. The backstory there.
I have a couple of kids. I got 5 kids, which is more than average. But I have a daughter and then 4 boys. I got a gap in between my youngest boy, and then we have a set of twins that came around whenever I was mayor. In 2017, life was just happening. Life was chaotic. I was doing construction jobs. I was flipping for real estate guys. Last job was for a dear friend of mine. He constantly asked me, "Are you coming back?" "No, I'm not." And I forgot how to do carpet. We were on this last situation trying to get it done before closing, and I put 7 seams in a closet.
Of carpet?
Of carpet. At that point in time, I was sleeping on the job. I mean, I took cots with me, and that job, one thing after another happened. One of the worst we ever had. Pipes broke. Even with trying to keep the house heated, keeping heaters underneath the house, it was a nightmare. And after all that stuff, I was gone. I wasn't at home. I'm losing money every single day going in the hole. Like, it's not worth it. So a lot of different things happened, and my wife and I had gone through some stuff. We were on the verge of a lot of things happening and just blowing up, and over $1 million in debt.
How many kids do you have at this point? 2017.
Had 2 kids.
You had 2 kids.
At that point. Got to the point of...
It was ugly.
It was pretty
We're
bad.
Getting along. I get it, because similar, and that's why I was asking about the age of your kids. Speaking from experience, I get doing my thing around the same time, honestly, Roger. I'm a processor, so I'm honestly thinking I'm having these conversations. And then she's like, we never talked about that, which is causing more friction. She's home with kids. And
we have saints as wives.
And then we have money, stress of money, painting a picture. Being
the sole provider. I wanted to have a wife that was a stay-at-home mom. That was a sacrifice that we chose before I even asked her to marry me. So there's always that pressure of doing that. And just one thing came to another. I said, I'm going to stop doing my construction work. I'm going to stop hustling all this extra side stuff. The use of all this money, what is the use of all this and building a reputation or whatever for it all to explode because you're not doing the things you should be doing? So I said, I'm going to stop doing all this stuff. I have a friend of mine that was trying to get started, really getting deep into doing an outdoor living company. So I said, hey, Randy, we've known each other for years. And I said, hey, I need something different. You need somebody to sell for you. You're an excellent marketer, how to do everything. Let me go do what I do best. Shut everything down. And then in that time period, with being in debt, we went in and negotiated all of our debt. I can never have a Chase credit card again, just so you know. But it's not a bad thing necessarily. We negotiated all that down. I was able to wholesale. I was able to flip. I was able to do all the things, still using my skills while I was still doing a full-time job. And we were able to pay off that debt. Luckily, my wife's a great steward, and we don't have debt on our house. Luckily, we actually just lost it this last year with the fire, but it's a blessing to have somebody that has that good stewardship. But I talked to a friend of mine and I talked to my wife, and I said, listen, I need to get back into ministry. Something's missing. I'm not in my call. So I've worked inside churches. I've been a youth leader. I've done men's Bible study and things like that, but that's not my call. My call is the international community. And taking that 7-hour F in college was because I did that project. I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. And I got back a day too late to drop the class. And they're like, hey, you can retake it. It's like, nope, I ain't doing that. So with all in all, we just started over basically at 0 and here we are again, back into real estate. We got some doors and have had a lot of doors and served publicly. I served publicly for my city for 14 years. Finished out at the mayor position, and I've been at that for a year this month.
How did you get into that position?
After I graduated college, after I took this off, I still finished a degree in public service. So I have an associate's. I was bored. As entrepreneurs and people that are doing what we do, we need 10 plates spinning. But we lived right across the street from the city hall. And that's where our home was. And I talked to them. I just graduated. This is my background. I grew up in politics. That's another reason why we moved a lot. My parents did initiative petitions all over the country. So I've always loved politics. I know that voting matters. I know that engagement makes a big difference. So, hey, I live here. I'm not planning on going anywhere. I want to serve. So went across the street, talked to Mayor Pat Woolley, and I said, hey, I want to serve. How can I do that? And he said, well, we got a planning commission's open. And he said, well, there's you and one other guy. So went before the council, said, hey, this is who I am and what I am. The other guy got it, which is fine. And then Pat called me, because he and I are good friends, and he said, hey, I got a spot for you at large. So I want you to come do your spiel again. So I got put on the planning commission. And I was on there for about 6 months, got to know my council members really well. And because we have 8 council members and a mayor. So Dean Johnson and I got to know each other really well. And he's like, hey, I need to resign. Health is terrible. I mean, took over his spot. Third, from that point, did a lot of different things. I got to go and vice mayor under Jim Mickley, which is my immediate predecessor for whenever I became mayor. So it was great. It was just one step at a time.
Talk to me about leadership. How did you learn to lead? Is that something?
Trial and error, and mentorship. I was late getting here. That was me with my spiritual mentor. And that man has saved my marriage. He has saved just...
How long has he been your mentor?
My dad's been dead 14 years, so 12 years. We met every Thursday or Monday for that long, unless he or I were out of town. We learned to find the right people in the right position.
Is he a father figure to you?
Not necessarily. A good older brother. Looks, he's 50-something. He's actually turning 70 this year, so he looks young. I even saw him this morning, and it's like, I think you're a liar. I don't think you were born. Fantastic guy. One of the things, you go through Proverbs, the wise man learns from other people's mistakes, to seek wisdom. And I wanted to make sure that I was not learning the hard way. Stubborn, and I learned the hard way sometimes. But for the most part, hey, I want to be in this place. I want to learn how to do this. I want to learn from somebody that's successful already so that I don't make all these crazy pitfalls. So
that's why I read books. For $20, you can get someone else's wisdom and mistakes.
It's amazing.
And if I can apply one principle per book,
it's pretty good.
You could be a whole lot smarter.
You have to take a break, too. My wife and I had a challenge one year, and she's read 80-something books, and I read 30. She's a reader, and I'm not a reader. I was just audio, and I'll get through that and listen to a lot of different things. $20, you can learn a lifetime of lessons. And I have that habit of, I don't want to try to learn everything because then I'm going to get sidetracked and I'm not going to do this. So I always read a book, and I take the nugget that I need.
I try to pick one thing because I figure Audible, I do a lot of listening. If it's a good book, if I'm going to listen to it twice, I automatically buy the hard copy. But I always try to pick one thing. What am I going to apply from this book? Because otherwise it's just noise.
Top 5 books. So what would you say are top, off the top of your head?
A mindset book that really shifted my perspective would be Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I would not probably put that on my top 5, although at the time I would have. Other books, my favorite author would probably be Benjamin Hardy. Talks a lot about psychology and business. I listen to his books over and over and over. Hobby horse right now, honestly, is missionary biographies. Just getting pumped up about how God is working in other people's lives. We're reading right now, as a family, I'm reading to the boys every night, about Mrs. Thresher. She's missionary in Egypt. I've never read a missionary from Egypt story in the early 1900s, and we're not done with it, but she just started an orphanage. Started with one kid. She's up to 1,100 right now. And all on faith, depression, day to day. Loving those right now. Roger, they're just anchoring me to, we serve a big God who cares about us and wants to provide for us and wants us to live by faith. And I would argue, my brand is Kill Complacency. I would argue in America, it's real easy to get complacent with our faith.
Astronomically easy.
We have so much. We have a church on every corner. We have 8 versions of the Bible at home. We have 6 Bible apps. It's everywhere. The Bible's everywhere. And it's easy to take for granted. And so these books have been really good for me just to realize what I have. Another one I did recently is called The Insanity of the Gospel. And that is about a guy in the 90s who went behind the closed doors. And he talks about those missionaries in China or wherever, they would say seminary happens in prison. And when they a code of honor for them to get locked up and busted, their house church to get
Called the Paul Award.
because they would go to prison, they would minister in prison, they would create their churches in prison, but they would meditate on Scripture and they would know Scripture. And those guys, when there's an absence of Scripture, they would rip out portions of the Bible, they would memorize them and pass them around, and they would memorize huge portions of Scripture. Let's pump me up right now.
I love that. A book that I read a long time ago called When Helping Hurts. And hearing your stories about that. It's people with charities, and people with ministry and things like that. I think everybody that is in that world does it for a purpose and because they have great intentions, right? And I've been called out on that myself. It's like, hey, are you harming anybody doing what you're doing that we do? And we always bring in the people that are there locally because they know how things are done. We cleared out
We can go in with our American ways and almost do more harm than good.
this last trip to Kenya that I went to back in after the fire, so I think it was in June or July. But I said, okay, I have my American idea. How are we going to my guys honest with me? And the really hard things like, oh, you're helping us. I need your honesty about it because I'm not trying to change culture. I'm trying to change mindset. However we make that tool happen, that's what we want to do. So they shot down half the stuff that I talked about, which is great. And then we took this alternative. Awesome. We'll do that.
So, Roger, talk to your heart. Talk to us about Kenya. You realized you had to get back to ministry. How did you pick Kenya? How did that come about? Talk to me about what you're doing now.
That came about because of all that time blowing up, and I talked to my wife, and I talked to some mentors and people, and I said, hey, I need to get back into ministry. And my wife and I grew up in a place called Heritage Baptist Church here in Oklahoma City. And we talked about friend Sam Kurui, which he's now passed away. He's from Kenya, grew up with him in church. And I talked to him and said, hey, I need to get back into ministry. And keeps popping up. Who do you know? Or are you going? Or who do you know that's got something going on so I can go teach? Just a real quick side note is that DJ'd and MC'd for 10 years. For weddings, for ceremonies, for big events, whatever it is. And that's where God took a skill and talent that I didn't know I had and placed me in a position so that I could go speak on stage. Because I never thought about it. You know, a microphone, you're a wedding, trying to get people hyped up. God created that opportunity for 10 years. So that prepared me for going and speaking at this event called Pastor Alfonso Winos here in Oklahoma City also. He's Kenyan. He had 26 churches there. And he had this big event. Hey, I want to go. Took a couple other people with me as well, another speaker and a guy that did all the video and photography as well. And I spoke on basics, things of how do you prioritize things? Because when my wife and I are going through all that stuff, I was meeting with a coach, or not necessarily just a coach, but a counselor. And hey, you're whack here, that work-life balance. I don't know. But he gave me these tools, and I was able to take those tools with me. And I taught them. It's like, hey, what are your 5 priorities? And it's amazing what people say whenever you ask that question. It's going to tell you people where you are in life, where in your relationships, where you in your finances, where you are just as a person. And it's like, well, if you're doing it the right way, if you're a believer, that's God, that's your work, that's your ministry, and yourself. And then 7 things a day you knock off of that list. Did I have my prayer time? Did you read with your family? Did you pray with your family? All that stuff. Did you do your work? Did you do what you're called to do? And that really convicted me for.
Do you track that?
I do.
How do you track it?
So I have these little cards that I keep in my truck, and then I also have it digitally on my Google Keep. Just to remind myself, even if I don't get the 20 things done in a day that I need to, I get my 7 done.
I'm really huge on tracking because what gets measured gets done.
The data.
It's the data.
Data matters.
I have an app on my phone. It's called Habit Tracker. And it takes 5 minutes, maybe 10, probably 5 minutes a day. There are times I'm like, oh, I haven't prayed with Ginger yet.
Right.
I can go do that. I can check it off a list. I don't want to make it a checklist type of thing. But I do think...
be intentional.
And it helps me to see, I committed to this. I know this is important. So we're going to go do this thing. Vitamins is on my list. I need to track that because I don't always take it. And I see vitamins, I go pop the pills.
I tell them that my family time is scheduled too. Whatever's on my calendar or on my list gets done. If it's not, it doesn't exist. But I schedule time with my family.
Yeah.
Every single week I have a different kid that I take on a daddy date.
Every week.
And sometimes I don't do it, but for the most part, unless there's just some really weird reason, I make sure to spend that intentional time. And the reason why is because that matters to me. I want my children to talk to me whenever they're adults. I talked about that on the phone a little bit. That older kids sometimes take a lot more time. No, being
But
very
that's the thing.
intentional.
No, they don't take time. That means going somewhere else.
I'm a pretty smart guy. I got wisdom to give. I get asked to go speak internationally. To be really intentional, a lot of those hard lessons, whenever you almost lose everything, it changes your perspective. Sometimes you get back into that too. And I'm guilty of it. I'm working too much and not prioritizing priority.
I would argue that that's one of my weak points is I love to work. To your point, I have to put on the schedule. These are family activities. These are family things we're doing. My wife and I get away end of the year every year, and we plan out our year. And we say, we're doing trips. We put them on the calendar. Now everything else gets orientated around those things.
That's a lesson I need to take from that. I'm scheduling out a vacation for our entire family to go do something. I was actually looking at it on my way this morning on my priorities.
Just put it on the calendar. Have a date night.
I get it done. So before June is what she said. Wide window. So to get back, I did that, and I got invited back to talk with some people doing a lot of different things. Farming, micro farming, doing cassava, doing hog farming, chicken farming. We've had a transportation company where we bought a van, and then there was a goal of that van, and that was to transport people from, basically, if you think about Oklahoma City to Joplin, basically the area or the distance, but it's from Nairobi to Kisumu. So there you have to pay a down payment, and then you have 2 years period to pay it off. No matter if it's a $100,000 vehicle or a $10,000 vehicle. Is your
balloon, you pay at the end, or you pay along the way?
Enough along the way. We're going to have a mission with this. I'm going to give you something. You have to have a
Business.
plan. And whenever they were done paying for it, they decided not to do the transportation anymore, and the family has that vehicle now. It's like, that's fine. That's a victory. So it paid for itself. Think about Robert Kiyosaki. His wife was like, well, we're going to buy assets to buy that thing. So that's how we looked at it. We're going to have a business that's going to pay for it, and then we're going to do whatever you want to with it after that. So there's been a lot of ups and downs on things. Some things failed. Some things were a success.
How we learned.
Internationally, it's a whole other animal. We had a new president came in Kenya, and they took over the child feeding program at schools. So those were done by...
You guys had it set up?
We did.
And they took it over?
We had 3 schools. And
doesn't it happen quite a bit?
It changes with administrations. But whenever you have... Now, it's going to be this way for the next 8 years in Kenya. So that's just how it is. But there's a lot of nepotism, and there's a lot of other things.
Nepotism.
So with your family or your closest friend is going to get that business. So it went from being able to go apply for it and get that to his tribal people themselves. So it took it away from everybody else.
He controlled it.
He controlled it. So that took away a big chunk of our profitability, which we used to start a children's school. You adjust.
I'm just curious, as an entrepreneur, I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values, and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives, to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways in which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there.